They fired 14 workers. Canada slashed 25%. Trump's tariffs backfired. GM closed one factory. Canada closed all doors. The result? Total disaster. Tonight, General Motors is finally feeling the full weight of what it means to turn its back on Canada. Industry Minister Melanie Joly is no longer using the soft language she once preferred. Instead, she delivered a message that was blunt and unmistakably firm. "We will stand up for auto workers," she said this week, breaking the long-standing silence that has traditionally surrounded Canada's trade policy. "For us, it is absolutely critical that General Motors honor what it agreed to. Billions of dollars in Canadian taxpayer funding were poured in to support you. And now it is time for you to uphold your responsibility to Canadians." Ottawa has just sent an unmistakable signal to Detroit's automakers that the era of quiet concessions is over. What General Motors failed to anticipate is that Canada's response would be far tougher than anything discussed in their boardrooms. More than 1,400 workers at GM's Kami plant in Ingersoll, Ontario, were forced to walk off the job this fall. Not because they wanted a confrontation, but because GM had decided that continuing to assemble electric delivery vans in Canada was no longer advantageous. The company called it an operational adjustment meant to optimize production at a time when EV demand is cooling. But to Joly, it was nothing short of abandoning workers. And in the weeks that followed, Ottawa demonstrated exactly what happens when a company breaks its promise to a country that once helped pull it back from the brink of bankruptcy. What makes this moment so different is that it is not just about a single plant or a minister's tough words. The deeper issue is the structural shift underway across the North American auto sector and Canada's refusal to keep playing the role of the silent partner, while Detroit makes decisions that directly affect entire communities. By late October, Canada's Finance Department unleashed a move that rattled boardrooms across Michigan. It slashed nearly 25% of GM's duty-free import. Quota Stellantis was hit even harder, losing almost half of its preferred access because of its scaled-down production footprint in Canada. The message could not have been clearer: build in Canada or pay more. For every vehicle, every part, every shipment across the border, GM's leadership assumed they could quietly reduce capacity, endure a few days of media noise, and carry on. As usual, they miscalculated badly. That decision triggered a coordinated response from the government, turning access to the Canadian market into a direct lever aimed at the most vulnerable points in Detroit's supply chain. And the move was issued just days before Prime Minister Mark Carney tabled his first budget in early November. That budget centered on a goal Washington often labels as economic nationalism. Carney calls it the Buy Canada Framework, backed by a $186 million investment designed to prioritize domestic firms and create a dedicated fund for industries hit hardest by Trump's tariffs. Steel, aluminum, and autos were first in line for years. Canada functioned like Detroit's extended assembly line, quiet, efficient, and reliably on schedule. That relationship worked when trade was stable and both sides kept their promises. But when Donald Trump returned to the White House in 2025 and imposed sweeping tariffs ranging from 10 to 100% on everything from vehicles to steel and aluminum, that entire structure collapsed. The Trump administration called it Liberation Day. Canada saw it as the point where old rules no longer applied. The Carney government chose not to stay on the defensive. The Buy Canada initiative mirrors Washington's approach, but its purpose is to use trade itself as a tool to protect domestic manufacturing. If the United States uses tariffs to safeguard its factories, Canada will use market access to safeguard its workers, and unlike Trump's erratic execution, Ottawa's strategy has been crafted like a scalpel, precise, targeted, and forceful by tying preferential quotas directly to actual production. In Canada, Ottawa has rewritten the rules entirely. This is not an anti-American move. It is simply a pro-Canada one. And the timing could not be worse for General Motors. Industry estimates cited by Reuters warned that vehicle sales in the United States and Canada could fall by as much as 1.8 million units this year. If Trump's tariffs remain in place, prices for mainstream SUVs and pickup trucks have surged by as much as 25%. Promises of bringing jobs back are quickly evaporating as production costs soar and vehicle demand plunges. American consumers are staying away from dealerships while companies that align themselves with Trump's brand of economic nationalism are now paying the price in falling sales and lots filled with unsold inventory. General Motors once assumed that shutting down BrightDrop would be a quiet adjustment, a simple cost-cutting measure in response to a cooling EV market. Instead of smoothing things over, the decision ignited a political and economic crisis that now threatens the company's entire Canadian footprint. Halting operations at the Kami plant did not just eliminate hundreds of high-skilled jobs, it effectively cut GM out of the clean tech manufacturing ecosystem Canada has been working to build in lead battery production, critical mineral extraction, electric drivetrains. Canada is assembling a complete supply chain designed to position itself at the forefront of North America's EV era, and GM chose to step away from it. As a result, the company is now facing higher import tariffs on every vehicle it brings into the North American market, losing its competitive edge in government procurement and suffering a major reputational blow in a country that once poured billions into saving it during the 2009 financial crisis. This week, Jolie reminded GM's leadership of that history and made clear that this time, Canada expects a reciprocal commitment. Anyone who has watched corporations make big promises only to back away later understands the weight of this moment. Jolie has given General Motors 15 days to present a concrete plan to bring a new vehicle model into production at Kami. Not reassurances, not vague statements. A real plan with timelines and accountability. When she met with union members this month, Ottawa's position was unmistakable. GM owes Canada more than explanations. What GM's leadership did not anticipate was how quickly the consequences would spill across the border. The Kami plant supplied key components for GM's EV lineup in the United States. But when that supply chain was disrupted and Canada tightened import quotas, GM's logistics system was thrown into disarray. Many dealerships in Michigan and Ohio reported delivery delays stretching for weeks. The shortage of components drove up costs and left noticeable gaps on showroom floors across the Midwest in trying to cut expenses. GM is sacrificing efficiency, reliability, and supply chain stability. And ironically, it is the United States, the very country that launched the tariffs and triggered the trade confrontation, that is now suffering the fallout through higher vehicle prices, slower production schedules, and increasingly frustrated customers. Carney's first budget was more than a fiscal document. It was a declaration of economic independence, one that aligns industrial policy and national security into a single vision. Canada will no longer operate as a branch plant economy, assembling products designed elsewhere and sending the profits south. Plants like Kami embody that mission. They link clean energy, critical minerals, and advanced manufacturing into Canada's own integrated supply chain. The new Strategic Response Fund is now helping steelmakers in Sault Ste. Marie and Hamilton retool for EV production. If General Motors and Stellantis want to remain competitive in the Canadian market, they will need to invest alongside their Canadian partners or risk being replaced, as Ottawa attracts new investors from Asia and Europe. When Trump announced his sweeping auto tariffs in April, he boasted that they would restore glory to the U.S. auto industry. 7 months later, the data tells a very different story. Supply chain. Disruptions are reducing North American output by roughly 20,000 vehicles per day. Nearly 1/3 of the region's capacity shares of both Ford and General Motors have fallen sharply since the summer. Manufacturing job growth, once a key campaign talking point, has stalled for 3 straight months. if you want to see the real impact of a trade war on workers. This moment leaves little to the imagination by turning trade into a weapon. Trump has inadvertently handed Canada a strategic opening, and Ottawa's new industrial plan is not a reactionary move. It is a calculated one. Canada is turning chaos into advantage, using the shock of America's protectionist wave to accelerate its push for economic autonomy. The combination of Trump's tariffs and GM's withdrawal from Canadian production has created a cascading cycle of failure. Without production, in Canada, GM is forced to import more components from Asia, precisely the markets Trump is targeting with new tariffs, and is now exposed to even higher cost as those supply chains are punished by U.S. policy. Those costs flow straight to American car buyers who are now paying thousands more for mid-size EVs and delivery vans that were once assembled in Ontario. U.S. dealers report vehicle shortages, delayed orders, and a cross-border supply chain, once seamless, now bogged down by paperwork and skyrocketing expenses. Meanwhile, Canada is expanding its partnerships with South Korea, Japan, and the European Union, drawing an investment that once flowed almost exclusively to Detroit. Trump's attempt to isolate his rivals has in the end left American automakers isolated instead, and Canada methodically and deliberately is taking advantage of every one of those missteps. The confrontation surrounding General Motors' Kami plant has moved far beyond the scope of an industry dispute. It marks the moment Canada refused to keep playing a secondary role in North American trade by cutting preferential tax treatment for General Motors and Stellantis. The Carney government demonstrated that economic sovereignty can be exercised through concrete policy, not just rhetorical declarations for General Motors. The consequences are immediate. Either it reinvests in Canada, rebuilds trust with the workers who helped establish its reputation, and rejoins Canada's clean tech future, or it will watch its market share slip into the hands of competitors ready to seize the gap it leaves behind. As for Trump, the lesson has arrived harshly. The tariff war he launched with promises of bringing manufacturing back to America is now undermining the very industrial base he vowed to protect. Supply chains are fractured. Costs are rising. Jobs are not returning, and Canada's emergence, accelerated by Washington's own actions, no longer depends on any signal from the United States. Jolie's effort to keep Kami alive, combined with Carney's long-term industrial strategy, is opening a new chapter in the continental economy. Canada has not only held firm in the face of Trump's tariffs, it is emerging stronger, more confident, and ready to redefine the rules of North America's auto sector. General Motors once believed it could retreat quietly. Instead, its actions have set in motion a major shift that may reshape the economic balance of North America for decades to come. And in that transformation, Canada no longer needs anyone's permission. This is a demand for respect and a declaration backed by policies that strike precisely at the vulnerabilities of its counterpart. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to follow Canada's journey as it rewrites the rules of North American trade, this channel will bring you every detailed analysis in the clash between Ottawa and the chaos unleashed by Trump. If you believe workers deserve loyalty from the corporations they helped build, be sure to hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe. We'll continue covering every step in Canada's strategy to achieve true economic autonomy. A new chapter is beginning to unfold.